Chapter 17. Chior of Kin. The night continued with drinking and feasting, though, before long, all three of the travel-weary Culls fell asleep on the mess hall tables. Skature and Crod continued their tales of Rayan battle for hours after that. "You threw their dead back atop 'em! Ha ha! Skature, you savage oaf! What? They're living bury their dead, so I figured I'd just use their dead to bury their living!" The laughing and jesting could be heard throughout Staunt, echoing between the wooden homes and barracks. At last, the two drunken comrades decided it was time to sleep themselves. Crod and Skature carried the three young ones under their arms and led them to a travel inn for the first safe, comfortable sleep in far too many days. Neither the glare of the sun nor the caw of the ravens outside roused any of the four before it was nearly midday. The tireless and desperate struggle which had begun in the nighttime streets of Ypol's outer ring was finally a memory instead of persistent dread. Before the sun could reach its peak, though, something roused Hela. It was a scratching coming from the door of their room. Cartha had become impatient with her sleeping master as the day slipped away. Farah was the next to be alerted by the scratching, but she wasn't quite awake. Hela watched her pulling the covers over her face, then scratching at them like she was struggling to escape to the sound of Cartha's scratching at the door. Her eyes fluttered and twitched. Then, all at once, she scrambled to her feet. Her mouth moved like it was trying to scream as her chest lit bright red, cold sweat pouring down her body. Hela rushed over to Farah to see what was happening. Farah, are you all right? What's the matter?" Farah's panicked expression turned to one of sorrow as she met Hela's worried eyes, unable to express her present terror. She welled up with tears and slumped to the floor, hugging her knees and burying her face in them. Hela knelt down and hugged her tightly. "We're safe, Farah. We made it. It's okay now." Senna watched the scene from the small bed he and Hela had shared for the night. He then looked over to a still slumbering Skature, the scratching at the door now accompanied by whimpering. Senna stretched, got up, walked over to Skature and shook him softly. "Mr. Skature?" Skature didn't move. Senna shook him some more. "Mr. Skature, you need to get up now." Skature grumbled and turned over, pulling a pillow over his head. Hela looked up from where she knelt, huffed loudly and walked over to Skature's bed. She tore his blanket off, balled it up, and threw it at his head. "Get up, Skature, before Cartha breaks the door down to drag you out herself." Skature sat up, blanket draped over his head. I'm up! Grom's sake, child!" Senna giggled at the sight of the hungover Thootin, struggling to find an exit from the blanket Hela had thrown over him. Hela grinned as Skature found his way out, then sauntered over to the door, one hand on his forehead. He opened it up only to be bowled over by an overzealous and slobbery Cartha. "Oh, come on, you two! Give me a break!" He spat, wiping his face, then pushing the playful hound away. All right, everyone settle down, keep your voices low. Any more of these attacks and I'll just send you back to the Rayans." "Well, if you weren't so drunk from last night, we wouldn't have to beat you awake," Hela retorted with a grin as Senna giggled some more. "I tell you, the youth these days, save 'em from slavery and death, feed 'em and house 'em, and they can't even let a poor, hungover man sleep it off." Skature now joined Hela in grinning. Farah had composed herself by now, Skature none the wiser to her recent incident. "Well, judging by everyone's eagerness," Skature continued, "I do suppose it's time to say our thank yous and goodbyes to Staunt. We got a bit of a climb yet before us if we're going to make it to my village before sundown." Hela's eyes widened with that last part. "Your village? We're going there today?" "Indeed we are, little miss. The very place of your favorite scoundrel's birth. The proud village of Eründt. They will all be very excited to meet you three." With that promise, they tidied up the room, thanked the innkeeper, and mounted their hull hounds. "Are we going to say goodbye to Crod?" Hela asked Skature. "Oh, you kidding? That old relic will be asleep till next week after last night. Nah, we'll let him get his beauty rest. Grom knows he needs it." Hela and Senna both chuckled at Skature's last dig. "Hela, my dear, if you'd be so kind to awaken your flame, Cartha is most anxious to introduce Drom to the slopes of his birthright." She did just that, followed behind by Skature. Both hounds began to glow. Then Cartha sprang forward down the street, Drom following close behind toward the mountain ahead. What was a trek of blazing speed through the flatlands and foothills the day before now became a continuous string of quick leaps and springing jumps up the perilous, jagged rock faces of the Hülhorn. Hela soon realized why the Rains were unable to press into this land. Any regular person would have their work cut out to even attempt to scale these passes, let alone at speed, but Kartha and Drom were in their element. While she was melded with Drom, Hela could sense the joy and elation he took in the process, like a fish put into water for the first time. Up they climbed, without missing a single foothold. The passengers on their backs were just there to enjoy the view. The hounds were unflappable, they were majestic, they were home. After hours of scaling that felt like minutes, the sun began to touch the upper edges of the mountain range, threatening to retreat behind them, bringing the night. As Hela watched it start to throw golden rays across the snow-capped peaks that broke up the horizon, she noticed something in front of them, just off to the left. Smoke, she thought. That must be the village, Skater's village, Eründt. She didn't know how he did it, but Drom agreed with her thought. She could sense his own in response to hers. He could smell the village from here. They were getting close enough to smell it. She even began to notice the sensation of other Theutons in the same direction. She could feel their flames react with her own. "Almost there, young ones!" Skature shouted as if he was sharing their thoughts. 3 dozen more leaps and Kartha and Drom landed on a plateau. Before them, in the waning light, rose thick wooden gates that were backlit by crackling firelight coming from inside the village. As their party approached the doors, Skature didn't even need to call out this time. They swung open in front of him. The guards must have sensed him the way that we did on the way up, Hela thought. "We've reached it, my young friends!" Skature threw his hands into the air as a vision of buildings surrounding a large bonfire appeared through the gates. "Welcome to the hidden village of Eründt." The 3 young visitors gazed in awe at what was a mysterious town. The architecture was unlike anything they had ever seen. Not at all like the simple, rustic design of Staunt. Eründt seemed at one with its surroundings, like it had been there forever. The sculpted hardwood designs gracing every pillar and overhang almost merged into the rock faces that bordered and protruded throughout the village. They were obviously ancient, but in meticulous condition. Oil and stain had kept their form and function for what must have been hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. "And we've arrived just in time, too," Skature continued. "The evening recitations will begin at the community altar soon. It's perfect timing, ha ha!" Hela didn't hear what Skature was talking about because she was too engrossed in the artistry surrounding her. There were what appeared to be stories of adventure and heritage carved in reliefs everywhere. She wished she had been there during the daytime to really get a good look at what was now only being illuminated by the dancing rays of firelight. "Wow, how old is this place?" she asked, releasing a deep breath. "Well, you would have to ask an elder that one, little miss. They count things like that in generations. The good news is you won't have to wait long to meet one." Just as Skature said it, a voice called to him from under an archway to the right. "Skature, my boy, welcome back from your sojourn into darkness." Red eyes shining from the shadows revealed an old man stepping out to meet his returning kin. He wore loose-fitting garb covering his whole body. His head was bald but for the sides, which were long and pulled into a short knot in the back. His face was worn, but not in the way that Crod's was back in Staunt. No, this elder's skin was much looser and tired. Yet despite his apparent fragility, Hela saw sharpness in his eyes and a potent air of wisdom. "Adune, my dear watcher, Eründt would not shine half as brightly without you here to greet us," Skature responded, dismounting Kartha to meet the man halfway. They each grabbed each other's shoulders and both men's flames brightened along with their smiles. "I knew you would return. I believed in Grom's love for you, child. It is as strong as her will, which you follow with your whole heart, dear boy." Someone else interrupted their reunion. "And what of the others you led into darkness?" the voice asked with a judgmental tone. "Did they not also follow her will as this warmonger professed it? Or did you abandon them for the sake of these cullborn you desecrate our presence with this evening?" Hela caught the sight of a growing crowd of Theutons who had begun to gather as Skature and his elder reunited. The voice came from a man at the front of the crowd. His arms were crossed defiantly. His stern, disapproving glare framed by short, black, slicked-back hair. He appeared similar in age to Skature, though shorter and portly in a way that Hela had never seen a Thooten before. "Eründt," Skature replied without looking at the man. "I trust you've lost no one in the past 2 years of tending carrots and hiding from your shadow." "That's correct, O mighty Death Seeker," the man retorted. "If safety and prosperity are the only accusations you can levy in defense of your doomed and reckless adventure, I'm happy to bear their weight." Hela's stomach roiled. She immediately loathed this person. Her flame rose with each venomous word he threw at Skature. She had a mind to speak up in his defense, but it was the elder, Eründt, who interjected at that point. "Eründt, Skature, children of Grom both, let us not quarrel over whom among us adheres more to Holy Grom's will. She resides in us all, and it is her desire that we each fulfill what of us she asks, be it noble or ignoble." Both men seemed to pause for a moment, trying to determine if they were the noble or the ignoble one in Adun's enigmatic entreatment. While the elder worked at diffusing a growing tension, Farah looked over at the crowd behind Eründt. Her gaze settled on a young man near the edge of the gathering. She stared, shocked at what she was seeing. His hair, it was red. She wondered at first if it was a trick of the low lighting or a reflection from the fire, but it was too vivid, too vibrant, unlike anything she had ever seen. As she stared, taken aback, the young man turned a pair of blue eyes to meet hers. She glanced away, hoping he hadn't noticed her staring. When she glanced back, though, he was still looking right at her, this time with a large smile that she couldn't help but reciprocate. She blushed and looked down, then pulled her hair in front of one eye. Mercifully, Eründt broke her moment of awkwardness by addressing Skature's 3 visitors. "As for our guests, they desecrate nothing. This night may we rejoice together, for lo, 3 condemned of wicked Paul have been delivered by the grace and love of mighty Grom." The old man shuffled over between Cartha and Drom and reached his hands out towards Farah and Hela. "We welcome you, descendants of our dearly lost. Be welcomed in the heart of your natural birthright, the sacred Hülhorn, and here in Eründt." This man certainly has a way with words, Hela thought. His lofty speech had calmed the crowd of native Thootens. They began to dispel, mostly in the direction of the bonfire behind them, toward the center of the village. "Skature, my brave warrior," Eründt continued, "please come and bring your children with you to the altar of origin. We are soon to begin our recitations, and many will want to hear the harrowing tales, despite what Eründt may say to the contrary. My dear watcher, nothing could bring my heart greater joy than to hear the words of the triumphant spoken through your lips once more." He turned to Hela. "Follow me, my dear. There will be food and drink for us at the altar where Eründt, watcher of the unbroken binds, blesses us with recitations of ancient Thooten lore. You're gonna love it!" If the promise of food and drink wasn't enough, the thought of learning more about her people's heritage, right from the source, made Hela's eyes glow with happiness. The party continued down the central cobblestone road, in the direction of a large bonfire. Hela bent over from her mount to speak to Skature, who was now walking alongside Cartha. "What's up with that Eründt guy, Skature?" "Ah, him. Remember when I told you about Thootens who care more for their politics than their people? Eründt is their highest form. He's the consul of Eründt. Loves nothing more than to poke his nose into everybody's business as if it's his own, like he's doing them some sort of service. He's a spineless, self-interested coward, but due to his status in the village, many people follow his lead." Pfft, Hela scoffed. "Why would anybody want to follow a coward like him?" "I agree, but you'd be surprised, little miss. Many people, sadly, even Thootens, would lower their noses to the dirt for a walled fortress and the promise of fresh bread. It's despicable. Grom forbid our people crumble for the sake of a warm sheet while our enemies surround us, plotting our destruction." The cobblestone road became a large open circle surrounding the bonfire whose light was visible from the village gates. It was the altar of origin that Eründt had spoken of earlier, a large octagonal metal structure that stood knee-high off the ground. Its circumference was surrounded by an opening large enough to accommodate 3 rows of 20 or more ornate benches in a semicircle, enough to seat several hundred people around it. Come, young ones, Skature said, almost bouncing with excitement. Let's get a front row before it fills up. Hela and Senna hopped down from Drom, as Farah did from Kartha. The two hullhounds wandered off towards the buildings that surrounded the town circle as their flames dissipated, while the three young newcomers followed Skature to an empty bench at the front. The fire from the altar was warm on their legs as the high-altitude night air bit at their ears. Crowds of people were milling about, speaking in low tones as they found their seats, mostly near the back of the 3 rows. Hela noticed the red-headed young man from earlier looking for a seat off to her right. She nudged Farah, who glared at her and looked away. Smiling, he approached the bench that Farah was sitting on, his eyes locked on her the entire way, then turned towards Skature, who was sitting between Farah and Hela. "Welcome back, Firestarter," he greeted him with a cheerful tone. Well, look at this fine young gentleman," Skature teased. "This couldn't be young Fald now, could it? No, you must have stolen his hair. He was just a runt last I saw." "How did you guess? I may have kept my hair, but I stole a run's height. He's been grumpy ever since." Skature burst out laughing. "Oh, dear boy, he would have to have been tall for you to steal his height, and capable of smiling for you to have made him grumpy. I'm happy to see you haven't lost your wit as you've grown into your body." "Just witty enough to make trouble, but just smart enough to avoid it," Fald chirped back, turning his glare to side-eye Farah with a grin. She smiled, blushed, then looked down at the ground. "Would you mind if I sat here with your new friends?" he asked of Skature, while still keeping his eyes on Farah. Of course. Sit down, my boy. Enjoy the warmth and the recitations with us," Skature replied, looking down the bench. Hela and Senna sat to his right, filling up that side of it, while only Farah sat to his left, leaving enough room for 6 more people in that direction. He waved Fald over toward the left. "This is Farah," he said to her apparent horror. Fald reached a hand out to grasp Farah's shoulder in the Thooten manner. "Pleased to meet you, Farah," he said, raising his flame slightly as he did. "My name's Fald, but most people call me Red. I have no idea why." Farah smiled as her own flame ignited in response to his, but remained silent with her hands in her lap. "Don't mind her, my boy. She's new to our customs, and, they don't teach our kin as they ought to any pole. Even so, she's not much for words since we escaped that place," Skature said, cutting his eyes towards her. "Much like Nassel in that way." Fald's pleasant smile suddenly shifted, his eyebrows slightly lifting, apparently knowing what Skature meant when he referenced Nassel. He looked back to Farah, who was gazing at him through her hair. "Then I guess it's a good thing I can talk enough for 2, he said, sitting down beside her. Hela watched this whole interaction with subtle intrigue, having never seen Farah shy before. It seemed like she had no idea what to do with this Fald, and here she was with no way to communicate or put up a wall like she normally would. Meanwhile, her body language completely gave her away. Though what should be mortifying for the young 19-year-old woman looked inexplicably calming. There seemed to be something disarming about Fald, an unabashed kindness and honest joy that appeared to make her feel safe, even welcome in this otherwise alien environment. It wasn't long before Eründt stepped up to the front of the circle and began to address the crowd in a loud yet pleasant voice. "My dear children of the flame, glorious and endowed of holy Grom, let us rejoice together in sacred Eründt before the altar of origin, for here, upon this night, we welcome back into our union a warrior of the unvanquished flame, a fire starter, a mighty hand against the darkness of soul, Skature of Eründt." The fire from the altar flared straight up at Eründt's exaltation. "Verily, our most valiant emissary of Grom's vengeance, of her most holy retribution upon the wicked city of Epol, has returned to us this night, and lo! He has returned 3 children of Grom's back to her." The fire flared once more. It wasn't clear to Hela the first time, but this time she noticed that, without a doubt, everyone's chest also flared when the fire at the altar did. Everyone, that is, besides Senna, who had never wielded the unvanquished flame. "Fire starter, name the children you have freed from damnation, that we may bear witness to Grom's great deeds." Eründt motioned to Skature, who stood with his chin held high, turning to face the crowd surrounding the altar. "Blessed of Eründt, cherished of Grom, With me from the heart of darkness, I have returned to you 3 Thooten prisoners, born into Rayan slavery in the accursed, desolate culls of Ipol. These I emancipated by Grom's love, Senna, Fara, and Hela. Once more, the altar burst forth as if rejoicing itself. Hela had never heard Skature speak so eloquently. It was almost as though he knew a different language, a holy language steeped in archaic theological prestige. His usual nonchalant verbiage was absent when formally addressing his kinsmen from the altar. 2 years ago, I and 3 of Grom's fearless embarked upon the most perilous endeavor of a generation. By the will of Grom and the obedience of her servants, we struck out to penetrate the very heart of villainous Sol's dark empire, the blasphemous capital city of Ipol. Therein, the stolen of Grom, rended by Sol's malice nigh 800 years ago, remain enslaved. We of the flame felt the grief of our blessed matron. Her righteous indignation rose within us, beseeching our intervention with the darkness. And behold, the altar flared. The wrath of mighty Grom rose with scornful reproach in Sol's evil city, even bursting forth from the embers of her stolen. Those whom had never felt the warmth of the unvanquished flame within them were themselves erupting in Grom's fury. As testament to her impending retribution, having long suffered in pitiable Rayan servitude, even children of the stolen bore, as witness to Grom's wrath, the awful magnitude of her terrible flame. Skature pointed to Hela. Here this night, on the 3rd day of solace, I present to Eründt, Hela, only 12 years of age, yet the flame within her begs reminiscence to the grandest Thooten warriors of old. Senna perked up and nudged his sister. Hey, Hela, it's Solace the 3rd today. Hela suddenly perked up herself. Oh, yeah. Huh, wow. The days have blurred so much since our escape, I didn't even realize it. Skature paused, then asked, Hela, do you have something to say? Hela colored. Nothing, Skature. Sorry, it's okay. It's my year mark today. I totally forgot about it. Adun's eyes widened as he looked aghast at Skature. Skature, fire starter, he exclaimed. She is 13! Skature suddenly mirrored Adun's shock. Hela had no idea what was going on. Is there some kind of year mark tradition they're going to do for me now or something? She thought, confused. Eründt took over for Skature in addressing the crowd before the altar. Truly blessed, he began, tears welling up in his eyes. We are truly blessed this night. From the pit of Sol's dungeon, Grom has found there and liberated a most holy avatar. A commotion stirred amongst those gathered around him. One voice rang out from the back. She's Cull-born! She cannot be an avatar! What madness is this, Eründt? Hela recognized the voice as Eründ's without having to locate it. Silence! Eründt thundered. Let the unvanquished flame of loving Grom speak her truth. He then motioned to 2 men who stood in the shadows behind the altar. Begin the beckon of unity! The men took hold of large mallets that were hanging from what appeared to be wooden drums, then began to strike them in unison, creating a low, ominous cadence. Hela's temperament changed from confusion to concern. The spirit of Eründt seemed to be shifting from rejoicing to something more serious. Suddenly, she noticed it. His chest. No, everyone's chests. They were all pulsing red to the beat of the drums. She looked around and behind her, only Senna wasn't. Everyone else's flames were being stoked at the same time. As the beat quickened, Hela noticed something else. Some people's flames were beginning to glow brighter than others. Looking back toward Eründt and Skature, their flames were even brighter than those behind her in the crowd. In fact, Skature's brightness outshone Eründ's. It became hard to look right at it. The redness appeared almost neon in its intensity, and it held that intensity as the drums quickened. But the light from the mass of Thootens grew brighter still. It was getting harder for Hela to keep her eyes open due to the brightness. She stood up to see where the light was increasing from, while the drums sped up to a roll. She couldn't figure it out until she noticed everyone's gaze. They were all looking at her. Hela looked down to her own glowing chest. It was so bright she winced and her eyes watered in protest. The drum stopped with a single loud boom. Everyone's flame slowly started to dull. The final flame to return to a dull red ember was Hela's. Adun shouted in exultation, "Behold! The love of Grom, matron of the unvanquished flame! Before us stands a vessel, a designate, an avatar, chosen of her mighty will!" He stretched out both hands towards Hela, who was still standing facing the crowd in shock. "Hela of Kull!" Musings of the Watchers. In the 150 generations since Thut, there have been only 3 recorded instances of an avatar of Grom. Legend says that they arise in response to the suffering of Grom's children. When Grom's pain becomes such that she is no longer able to contain her grief, an avatar appears as a physical conduit for her.